Hi there, thanks so much for watching another episode of Nadia TV, and today we're going to talk about fermented vegetables and how to make them. Fermented vegetables are super important for your gut and for digestive lining and for you to be able to digest foods better. So it's a super food on so many levels, and you can buy some in stores. It just has to be organic, it shouldn't have any vinegar, it should just be vegetables and brine and culture. So it's very important. There are certain steps how to do it correctly because it can turn into pretty bad disasters. It did it for me in the beginning because I didn't know what I was doing. So I just want to go through steps with you and make a really good batch of fermented vegetables together. So basically what we're going to need is some carrots. I already grated the carrots, and we're going to need this huge bowl. I would say, well, I grated quite a bit of carrots. You can use half a pound of carrots. Then I have the 2 heads of cabbage. One of them is a red leaf cabbage, and this is just a regular cabbage. So I have this. Then I have some kale that is I'm gonna grate as well. I have some grated ginger, already organic chopped ginger, so I'm gonna add a little bit of that. I have peeled 6 cloves of garlic. We're gonna add that, and that's pretty much it for now. I also have saved the leaves of the cabbage. You know how the outer leaves are a little bit rough and not really that edible, and I saved these leaves because we are gonna need them for later. Another very important point here is that I have disinfected everything that I am going to use. So basically what it means is that when I'm going to put my good bacteria together with the vegetables, I want to make sure that what grows is good bacteria. And of course we all know that everywhere around us there's bad bacteria, and we don't want that to be growing in our fermented vegetables. So that being said, before I use this bowl, I put hot water in it. Like, I just boiled water and pour it all over and squish it around, pour it out. Same goes for the jars I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using these 2 mason jars. I'm going to try to link down below the jars where I bought them. These are great jars, and I also had to disinfect them same way. So everything that's being used, I pour hot water, boiling water in it, and just move it around, or wash it several times with soap just to make sure that it's all very clean. Of course, the soap I'm using is the biodegradable soap that also doesn't leave the residue and things like this. So you kind of just want to be mindful about that. Another thing to remember about fermented vegetables, while they are so cool, is that, for example, cabbage has a lot of vitamin C, but vitamin C is not as available in cabbage. Your body does not absorb it if you just eat raw cabbage. But if you ferment it, you suddenly get a ton of vitamin C. And we all know how important vitamin C is for immune system and to prevent, flus and colds and things like this. So we definitely want to get some, and this is awesome because fermenting vegetables brings out the best. So you definitely want to try that at least and see how it works for you. But I know that it's been an amazing thing for me. So I have already done some stuff with my red cabbage because I don't want to be here all day. I'm sure you don't want to be here all day watching me grate cabbage. So this is cabbage, and I'm using my food processor for that. You can definitely do it by hand, but for me it's just easier to do it with a food processor. It's much faster. So I put the carrots through there, I put the red cabbage through there, and now we're gonna add some green cabbage and kale. Unplug this thing, and we have everything that we have worked through in this setup. It's a messy process, so just be ready for that. I'm not saying it's really kind of an easy process that really doesn't create any mess. Unfortunately, it is a messy process and it takes a little bit of time, but in the end you get this amazing fermented vegetables that you know what they're made out of, what's inside them. And there are a few companies that make really good fermented vegetables that really do take care of those. The jar of a good fermented vegetable, the small jar, I'm talking a small jar like I made here, would run about $12. So it's up to you. I mean, it might get a little pricey, you know, over time to be buying those. And I also kind of like the fact that I make my own, and it's kind of a cool thing to do. So anyways, so here again, what we have here is carrots, some kale, some garlic, red and green cabbage, and I'm gonna add a little bit of ginger. I buy this grated ginger, so this is pretty easy for me. So what we do is we mix this mixture. We just make it a one solid color. And again, you don't have to use a food processor for this at all. What you can do, you can just grate it, or you can cut it by hand, whatever you like to do. But because I cook a lot, a food processor is actually a huge thing for me. I can link down below the food processor that I own. It's not an extremely expensive piece of equipment, but it's been very helpful for me for a lot of things that I need to mix, or mostly for like grating or making some things that are very useful, like my raw chocolate cheesecake, if you tried that before, which is absolutely amazing. You should absolutely try that. Find it under recipes on my site. And yeah, that's what we have going on here. Basically, we need to mix this stuff well. Of course, make sure that your hands are also clean, because you don't want to, you know, disinfected everything, but then your hands are extremely dirty. So just make sure that everything is clean. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to put some in the blender. Some of this mixture is going to go in the blender. I would say about 2 cups. So about 2 of these big spoons should be enough, because I still have quite a bit of this starter. And okay, and then I'm gonna mix it with this brine that I created. So this brine is 1 or 2 packets of this culture starter, which is incredibly good, and then a scoop of this Eco Bloom. You have to create it and put it together a little bit before you start doing the rest of the stuff, or just in the beginning. It needs to stand for about 20 minutes, so it needs to start working. Basically, you want it to be warm, you want it to be working, you want it to generally start doing its thing before you start the rest of the stuff. So I have this going on before I started shredding my vegetables. So this is what I'm mixing. I'm mixing my brine and 2 cups of these vegetables. I'm putting it in my blender, and now we're gonna blend it until it becomes this thick juice. So let's see if this is enough. Sometimes it's not enough. I think it should be okay. So at this point, I often just start mixing it with my hands, because again, I told you it's a messy process. But just just make sure your hands are very clean before you do that. And yeah, and you just want to make sure that all of the vegetables are covered in this juice that you just made, so it becomes this wet shredded vegetables. That's what it becomes. It's up to you. You can add some salt. Salt will actually help a little bit because salt makes the vegetables release the liquid, so it helps a little bit more with making the process a little faster. Okay, so we're gonna add a little bit of salt just so that we can kickstart the process a little bit. And the salt I use is only this kind of salt, Celtic Sea salt, not regular table salt. For anything I do, I don't use iodized salt or anything like that. I just use this Celtic Sea salt because it has all the trace minerals in it, so I like that. And talking about trace minerals, I like to add this stuff, which is called ancient earth minerals. I'm gonna link all this stuff down below so you guys don't have to run looking for it. But I just open a few of these and mix it in. Because remember, whatever you're going to ferment is also going to get activated, and it will become much more biologically available to your body. So the more good stuff you add, the better it becomes. So some people add something else, but I like this because this is actually the minerals that used to be in our soil before. It's no longer there, so it's really helpful to have this because it has all the zinc and magnesium and manganese and all the amazing things, you know, all the periodic table basically that we usually are missing, those trace minerals that are supposed to be in our water and things like this. And by the way, the water that I used for the brine that I boiled and stuff, I used distilled water, but you can use purified water. Just please don't just use tap water because it's gonna be, I mean, you can't have chlorinated water mixing with this because of course you understand the chlorinated water, chlorine kills all the bacteria, good and bad. That's why it's also so bad to drink tap water, because the chlorinated water kills a lot of bacteria in your gut, as well as whatever bad bacteria it's supposed to be killing in the water supply for us. It's also killing a lot of the good guys. So definitely don't use chlorinated water. That's very important. Just use the filtered water, or I use distilled water, but I'm adding these trace minerals because the minerals, you know, that is in the water, I don't quite want to keep because they're not exactly best. And I have a video, I can link it down below, about the water and why I distill water and what other options you can have. So now we take the jars, and now we're just gonna put the stuff in the jars. I know I could probably do it with a spoon, but you know, I told you it's a messy process, so you'll have to just watch me do this. So that's why I kind of didn't want to make a video out of it, because it's just not a very clean process. It's pretty messy. Talking about messy, this is definitely a process that is messy. And the way you want to pack these jars is you want to make sure that this is extremely tight. So now I'm actually thinking I might not be able to fill both jars. I might have to take another jar for the second one. But let's fill this one to the top. It has to be very tight. You have to make sure that it's extremely tight inside there, because you want the vegetables to release the liquid and to stay very close to itself. So we're just gonna do this. Yeah, because usually I use a bigger heads of cabbage, so this was slightly smaller heads of cabbage that I usually use. So that's why I got a little less vegetables out of it, which is a little annoying because it's not one jar, but it's nowhere near 2 jars either, so I'll have to use a different jug. So that's okay. Let's just do this with this one. So you see how I packed everything in very tightly. You have to make sure that it is in all the nooks and crannies of your jars. Has to be very, very tightly packed. And then I leave a little bit of space on top, and this is where the leaves that we saved are gonna come into the play. So these leaves that are hard and tough, we're gonna put a few of them on top so that we don't fill up the jar up to the top, but we're gonna use these leaves to be on top of the jar so that they help press things down, but we don't actually fill it up with the actual fermented vegetables to the top. So, and when your fermented vegetables are ready, you just discard these leaves. They're just here to serve the purpose. And there we go. Okay, so there you have it. You got the vegetables, fermented vegetables, in the jar. Let me go wash my hands, seriously. So there you go. We got a jar of fermented vegetables. I mean, it's not fermented yet. It's going to be fermented. So what do we do now? Well, if your jar seals this tightly, like this one, you know, when you actually have this clamp here, and you know that it seals pretty well. What you're gonna do, you're just gonna leave it. Don't leave it in a direct sunlight, but leave it in a warmish place. I leave it next to the sink, and it has to stand for at least 1 week. So it has to just stand without disturbing it for 1 week. You leave it there. What I do, I put it in Ziploc container, in Ziploc, because fermented vegetables have a smell, and the fermentation process does as well. So if you have anybody in your house who's going to be walking around saying that it stinks, this might help. So I just leave it in the Ziploc container for the duration, because it's still gonna, the fermentation will be lifting off the lid a little bit, and some of the smell might come out, so it might be smelly for the next week. So you leave it there and you just let it sit in the warm place, not in direct sunlight, for about a week. I usually say at least a week, at least 5 days. It depends on the temperature in your house. If it's like 90 degrees and you don't have an AC, well, maybe actually hold off in making your fermented vegetables. Just wait a little bit and make it in a normal room temperature, but in a warmer place would be good for it, because it's definitely gonna be working much faster and better if it's a little warmer. So, and this is the end product, guys. This is the end product. This is the fermented vegetables that I made before, and this is how they look. And they taste good, and it's really good for my stomach and for my digestive system. And remember, whatever you eat with them will be digested much easier and much faster. So if there are some things that are difficult for you to digest, like for some people it's cruciferous vegetables, for example broccoli, cauliflower, if you eat them together with a few tablespoons of your fermented vegetables, you will be able to digest it much easier, because basically fermented vegetable means that it's a vegetable that's already pre-digested, kind of outside of your body. So when it comes in, it's starting the process early on. So these vegetables that are difficult for you to digest are broken down by these cultures that are already alive and ready to go work. So that's the immense power of the fermented vegetables, and that's why they're so important and so useful. I hope this was helpful for you, and sorry if it was messy and it took a while to put it all together, but I really wanted to share with you how to make it, and I'll link down below everything that I used in this video so you can make it for yourself. I hope you enjoyed it. Love you lots. Bye.